we need to explain to people like what you can use to get out of a contract, like how that works. Because this is a question I get all the time.
It is. And as the broker, that's probably something that falls more on my shoulders too. So, if you're in, say, California, Colorado, Washington, and you make an offer on a house, you give Earnest money, and you get the home inspection back, or you just get the willies about the house, you can pretty much get out of it and get your Earnest money back.
Yeah, you could just be I heard there was a ghost.
Yeah, exactly, right? In Alabama, Earnest money is used one of three ways. You go to closing, it's applied towards your closing cost or your down payment, or refunded back to you if it's in excess. If you and the seller agree to part ways, there's a form called mutual release where you agree whether the seller or the buyer gets the Earnest money or how much each of them get. And third way is you go to court. So if you can't agree and you don't go to closing, it goes to court. So this surprises a lot of people. And then so what would determine who gets what, right? And it goes back to there are protections in our contract, for health and safety related structural defects, major subsystems, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, water, right? Well, I guess that's plumbing. And then if you do a home inspection, there's a separate addendum and you have some more protections built in there. And so there are ways to protect yourself, but cosmetics are not included. Yeah. And where I see people get into arguments and debates is this is cosmetic, this is not. And several years ago, I had had a deal where we bought a house and we had an inspection contingency and we bought it during the coming soon phase. So it was sight unseen, not only for the buyer, but for me. Oh, wow. And so, cause I can't tour a home during the coming soon phase, but it was that 2020 market. Yeah. And when we got in there, because we did have the inspection contingency, the water heater just looked like it was about to rust out. I mean, literally you could see little spurts of water up on the top, rust everywhere. Pipe was about to come off. But technically it got the water hot to where it was supposed to go. Yeah. And so this was an area where me and the other agent really butted heads, and she obviously had backup offers. So it was somewhere where we really had to I really had to hammer on the contract, the condition, the very specific wording in the contract about how it would not afford my client the use of this system. And that was how we were able to get them to, I can't remember now if they replaced the water heater or if we just got a credit for it, but we were able to push it through.
So that's interesting because, if one of the things that can be tricky is that, if your air conditioner is 30 years old, they test it and make sure it's working. That's why we have to ask how old the air conditioner is, how old all the major systems are before you go under contract. Because if you have a working component that's old, that's not a reason to ask for a replacement.
Agreed. Yeah. And I did have I ran into this previously, and the house had 2 air conditioner units. The big one for most of the house was newer. There was a smaller one for just a bonus space. And I guess my client, just didn't realize it. Right. So he had actually found the house and brought it to me. And, we bought the house with the air conditioner the age it is. We walked around the outside. We looked at the units. I don't know how he didn't know the age, but when the home inspection came back, that was a big sticking point for him. So we actually brought out our own inspector to inspect the unit because the seller wasn't going to give us the $7,000 for another unit or whatever it was. And, it was working fine. It was in great shape. That's awesome. But I had a home inspection report come back last night on a house that I have somebody under contract on. And the inspector noted in that report that the roof, the HVAC, and the water heater were all at end of life. Now we knew this going in. This was not news to us, but if this happened in another state where the seller would have been required to disclose that up front or ensure those things worked to whatever level, because we were here, it was below freezing all day yesterday, which is atypical for Alabama. But so the home inspector wasn't able to test the air conditioning portion of the HVAC system. Now you could test that it clicked on, but you can't test whether or not it cools when it's, 27 degrees out. Yeah. So we're going into this knowing that that's something likely the client's going to have to replace. Now, my client's very handy. He's looking for a fixer upper. We bought this at fixer upper price.
And I'm sure he knew that this was a possibility because you're his agent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah. And this was a conversation, we passed on other houses that were in worse condition, right? So going into this, eyes open, right? Yes. But again, somebody that's coming from the West Coast or the East Coast or a larger city where there may be more buyer protections might look at this inspection report and be like, oh, well, I can ask for this, this, and this, or get out of the contract and get my Earnest money back. And it's well, no, that thing heats and cools. It gets the water to the temperature it's supposed to be. That dishwasher runs. It might be 20 years old, but it runs, right? So that's something that people have to adjust to moving here.